Hi, welcome to Thriving in 5D, our YouTube channel that's based on the book that we wrote called The Grass is Always Greenest Under Your Own Feet, or Our Own Feet, I should say. And I am Phoenix Duffy, one of the co-authors.
Hi, I'm Sarah Noah.
And we have some news
And
for you.
yes, this is super exciting news. We're just thrilled that we could be featured on a special podcast. And the podcast is called Light Up Your Worth. And Debbie McAllister has put together this amazing podcast of spiritual empowerment for women. So we're very honored and excited to be part of it. Our episode is number 64, and you can find it on all the platforms where podcasts are found: Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And yeah, we're just very excited. We do talk a lot about concepts in our book, but since it's a women's spiritual empowerment podcast, we also get into some other stuff like our personal journey, and especially dear, yeah, and near and dear to my heart is the time that Phoenix and I spent together in California. So we definitely talk about these mystical, metaphysical, magical adventures that we had. And yeah, definitely vibing high and this feeling of up leveling. And so, yeah, it was great. So if you get a chance to check out this podcast, Light Up Your Worth by Debbie McAllister, thank you so much.
Yeah, she's amazing. I've listened to a lot of her podcasts and they just blow me away. So I felt so just honored, for that we got on this podcast, and it's all over the world, and it's also on Audible. I think we forgot to mention Audible. So, but the easiest way to get it, if you don't have any of those platforms, is just get it on YouTube. Just go to Light Up Your Worth and we'll be right there, number 64. So, and we did talk about our book, and we did talk about, our personal stuff. So personal life and spiritual concepts and things like that. So it was really exciting. I'm just going to start off today's gathering with just a little bit of background about our book for those of you that haven't read it yet or just have skimmed it. It's about two light-shifting teenage superheroes who biohack an old Earth paradigm town to heal it from lack, racism, injustice, corporate greed, and any kind of limitations. And a whole bunch of social justice issues are in the book, and we handle it from a spiritual perspective. And today we're going to be talking about the names of the characters and why we named some of the characters and the meaning behind that, and also some of the places that the scenes are in the book, because every bit of the story is packed with double meanings and connections to power words and things like that. So we were just going to kind of go through the book and name several characters. This might be part one because there's a lot of interesting things, and it's a really neat subject to talk about, why we would name these characters a certain name and what that means, even involved with the story or even not involved with our story that we wrote. So Sarah, did you want to maybe start us off with maybe one of the first characters that we talk about?
Yes, yeah, we talk about Bonita Lightbody, and she is one of our main characters and really is a driving force in the book. She's a wise woman, and she's one of the characters that in the book that doesn't have a story arc because she's so already arrived to her place. She's not a spiritual seeker. She's just in her element, being herself, emanating the love and the light. And yeah, her name is Bonita Lightbody. So she's just this beautiful being of love and light.
Yeah, and she's featured on the first page of the book, of the story. She's right here. I don't know if you can see without the glare. And her aura is shining so brightly because she's fully realized. And that's why one of the reasons we did choose the name Lightbody, because she was already living in her light body. And she wasn't weighed down by third dimensional issues and problems. She was already in her fifth dimensional true self, living in the town of Starseed. And so Starseed is another power word that we used for the town that the main characters live in at the beginning of the book, which is where everyone has fully realized they live with green grass under their feet, and their aura shines bright, especially from their heart. we have the flying pig Freedom. We want to talk about what that means to you, Sarah, because I know that's near and dear to your heart. The little pig is, let me just put it up while she's talking about our little flying
Yeah.
pig.
Yeah, he's a special companion animal to the family. And we don't exactly go into his backstory in the book, but we know that he's experiencing liberation, because in our world with currently, there is confined animal agriculture, and there's a lot of sadness and horror that goes along for humans and animals in that realm. So in this book, we see they're living in utopia, and animals are revered and loved for their own preciousness, their own sentience. And so Freedom, he really is representing the liberation of all sentient beings. And he does fly, so he does have some special abilities, but he's just a very joyful and loving companion to the family, and he's really an integral part of their family too.
Yeah, which is why we called him Freedom. And of course, in our book, we really like the representation of the saying, when pigs fly, that'll happen. So this pig is flying in the book, and he's a pet, he's not to be eaten. And so, a lot of things are going to happen in the book that you normally wouldn't expect. So you got to read the book to get excited about that and find out what that is. Yeah, so I think the next character that we might want to talk about is maybe the kids, the teenagers. I shouldn't call them kids, they're teenagers. And they are superheroes. They are fully realized, they have superpowers, they're light shifting, they've never lived in the old paradigm. Aunt Benita did live in the old paradigm for a short while, and then she left because she knew that she was ready for what Starseed had to offer. So, but serendipity and synchronicity are very unique. I mean, their names say it all. So clearly they embody the flow of life and the magical happenings that where both characters are in flow, and this happens and then that person says that, and then this happens and then this opens up, and it's just a complete flow like a river. There's more to that. Sarah, do you want to add something to the names of the main characters, really, serendipity and synchronicity?
Sure. We just came up with those names pretty spontaneously when we were creating the story, because we wanted to have an element of it is the flow, like Phoenix mentioned, the being in the right place at the right time. But I think when people are in alignment, as Phoenix mentioned, only growing up in this place of Starseed, a utopia, then because humans have these abilities, if they're living in connection with the earth, if they've never been introduced to some of the stressors to the human body, if they're living in homeostasis, then humans can have these powerful experiences. So it's kind of an aspirational superhero. Like we all can keep up leveling ourselves and keep aligning and keep reaching for those arrival moments of being embodied, being in the flow. And when we have the heart brain coherence, then these things come so easily. It can be a thought of, I need something, but then opening the door and it's already arrived. And sometimes just noticing how often that happens in my own life. I love to notice this, like, oh, I need some garlic or something. And then my friend might be like, oh, I got an extra clove of garlic. Do you need something like that? Those things kind of happen. And I just love when those things happen. And then another issue for me personally was my nickname as a child was Serendipity from my uncle. And my uncle was a veterinarian. And so our family, my family values growing up was to love animals. And I, even though I didn't become vegan or stopped eating animals later in life, just instilling that love of animals and really caring, the welfare and the care of animals is a biblical sense. Growing up Methodist, and just, having to be a steward of animals in the earth. So for me, there's some other important elements to the names too.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you had that nickname as a child. That's so cool. See, we learn stuff about people that we don't even know that we've known for so long, and it's part of the book already. So the next thing that we want to talk about probably is, I think, on the next page, we get introduced to the Heaven Ridges. So the Heaven Ridges are Serendipity and Synchronicity's parents. And we chose the name Heaven Ridge because I had a neighbor when I lived in Michigan, and their names were the Heaven Ridges. And I thought, what a lovely, beautiful name. And it's descriptive enough to where the people living in Starseed, this is like in alignment because it's like living in heaven or a utopia, like Sarah had explained. And that was my meaning behind the Heaven Ridges and naming them that name. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I do like it. One of the other names I had thought of was something about love, like lovely or love good or something like that, for the family. But I like Heaven Ridge in the sense that they really are on that. It's an allegorical story for the Garden of Eden. So yeah, they're just living on the edge of heaven, right in there. They can see it, they can feel it, they can embody it. The garden is blooming. They're just
living on the ridge.
Yeah, their needs are taken care of. And that's part of the element of the Garden of Eden story, is that God has provided all that is needed before us human people even know that we need it. It's like, oh, I can walk out my door and there's a rose blooming, and I can harvest the rose petals and I can make jam. And then I can, when it goes into fall, it makes rose hips and I can use that for vitamin C. There's just these, it's so obvious but it's so important too, to feel that. What does it really feel like to live right in the middle of the Garden of Eden, the heaven, because that's the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. And also in this second scene, we meet Hope Restores and Daniel Lyons. And we picked Hope because it's a name that everyone can, what's the word? Feel akin to, because we always have hope, but she has kind of lost her storyline. Is she's lost her hope, and yet her name is Hope, and so her last name is Restores. So it's interesting, the character, as she moves along in the book, she restores her hope towards the end, where she actually becomes enlightened, and the green grass grows under her feet, and she opens up her aura and everything. So I think that we really find that this character embodies her name for sure in her character. And then Daniel Lyons is very interesting too. Sarah, perhaps you want to speak about him while we have a couple minutes left here on the podcast for today, or the podcast. I'm sorry, we're on a podcast, but this is actually our YouTube channel.
Yes. And I want to talk a little bit about Daniel Lyons, and then just one thing also from the first scene. Would love to talk about 1111 Contemplation Way as well. But I'll get to Daniel Lyons first. There is an element of Daniel in the lion's den, which is a biblical story. And also, Daniel is persecuted in this story. And that's part of the story, the theme of going on to the story, because when they go to the old paradigm, any of the characters could have been persecuted and picked out. It could have been Freedom, might have been in peril of being sent to the slaughterhouse, or could have been any of the characters. The children are as siblings who are non-binary. They really could have been persecuted. And so we really had, but the reason I felt that we chose to have Daniel as this character who has to carry that burden is because there's such a attack on the sacred masculine, I felt that Daniel has the inner character to, because he's an ethnobotanist. He understands plant medicine. He understands the wisdom of the earth. So he is persecuted. He does have to spend time in prison, but we can't go into let the story too much because we do want you to read the book. But there is a point of his character is able to have a transition, and it's different than the biblical story. But in his story, he gets he's right in the middle of making the changes that are empowering. So he's a character who appears like his power is taken away, but really part of the way that his character is restored is through his twin flame, Hope. And that's another important element. So there was a lot going on with the characters of Hope and Daniel.
And the twin flame.
Okay,
so do you want to talk about the 11:11 that we chose on, at the beginning of the Starseed opening page?
That would be a nice way to wrap up this. Yeah. Just 11:11 is mystical, metaphysical, magical number. For a lot of people, it is a way to remember, like a number of remembering our marching orders, our divine plans for ourselves. Some people, it's a recognition of angels amongst us.
And also it's their address. It's their address in Starseed where they live when they first start off in the book. So we thought, wow, what a great place for it to be. That address would just bring so much joy to many people that know the meaning behind that, right?
And it's contemplation way, like they get to live in this contemplative, mindful, always in the moment place.
Right. And the way I always think of it is when, divine universal source, God consciousness intersects with Mother Gaia, and you just have this portal that opens and lots of good things, and it's very serendipitous and synchronistic things happen during that time. So anyways, I think we should probably wrap it up because we always try to keep it at a minimum here. But thanks for joining us today. And we'll go with part 2 next time. We'll finish the rest of the characters of the book and the meanings behind that. And we had so much fun talking about it just for a short time today. And we also are very excited about this podcast. We hope you check it out. It's on, like Sarah said, many, many different platforms. YouTube is probably the easiest, but then there's Spotify, Audible, what did you say? Not Google, Apple. Sorry.
Apple.
Oops. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Bye. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.